and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
We all know the pressures of this moment.
State leaders prepare for President Trump's return to the White House. A measure making it easier for kids in foster care to live with their relatives passes in Springfield. And Black maternal morbidity is up in Illinois. Cook County Health has a plan to help address it. And now to some of today's top stories. Former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan took the witness stand for a second day in his corruption trial. Madigan testified that he never engaged in any quid pro quo schemes with former Chicago Alderman Danny Solis. Madigan told jurors he only sought to help Solis when he could, but scolded him for suggesting an introduction to a developer would result in exchange for personal gain. He also testified that he and his former confidant, Mike McLean, who is also on trial, are no longer close. The judge sent jurors home this afternoon. They are expected to hear cross-examination from prosecutors on Monday. Campaign emails sent by former Mayor Lori Lightfoot to hundreds of Chicago public schools' email accounts raised significant constitutional issues. That's according to a new report from the CPS Inspector General. The report also shows that her re-election campaign had already been warned twice about sending electioneering emails to public employees. Lightfoot drew criticism in January 2023 for sending thousands of emails to 219 accounts, mostly soliciting volunteers. Those emails were first reported by WTTW News. Interim Inspector General Amber Nesbitt says her office found no evidence of coordination between the campaign and the school district, but that the emails essentially asked employees to violate CPS policy. A spokeswoman for the former mayor says she was never personally involved in those emails. The city is continuing its plan to bring back previously closed mental health clinics with the reopening of the Roseland Mental Health Clinic in a building that supporters say was once a Chicago police station.
And now to say that this is a health hub that the city has run, it's come full circle. We went from criminalizing people who were in mental health, who had mental health issues, who were in crisis, to now offering full service support, total support, treating individuals who are in need.
The mayor and other officials cut the ribbon on the facility today, which will offer a range of mental and sexual health services. The Chicago Department of Public Health also announced the expansion of the Crisis Assistance Response and Engagement Program, or CARE, which involves behavioral health and emergency medical technicians responding to 911 calls that have a mental health need. Up next, Springfield kicks off the spring session right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
It is a new day in the state capitol, where today the next group of state lawmakers were sworn into office. Our Amanda Vinicky joins us now with more about the year ahead for Illinois. Amanda.
Yes, Brandis, today's inauguration of the 104th General Assembly reminded me of that saying, what's old is new again. The legislature does have new members, and they will be starting from scratch when it comes to introducing and passing bills. But on the other hand, a lot is staying the same. The partisan makeup of the legislature, unchanged. Democrats still dominate, can pass measures without need for any Republican help. And then there's the issue of the state's finances. Back in a rough spot, Illinois staring down having to close a projected $3 billion deficit.
We're all in this together, and if you've read media clips or financial reports, it might be a tough year ahead. We will face stressful moments. So I am challenging myself and everyone here to be the better leaders of our state, to treat everyone with decency and respect.
Amanda, any insight as to what they're going to do about that?
Not a lot. Reporters did ask Governor J.B. Pritzker about it, and he promised to present a balanced budget next month with more details.
That's certainly not the first thing on my list, is thinking about tax increases. I'm looking at how we can manage balancing the budget within our means.
The Speaker of the House gave a small hint about his priorities during his inauguration speech.
The people who sent you here, who gave us this moment, expect us to move forward as one. People from Chicago to Carbondale want smart and sustainable investments in the resources that help people be their best. because they don't want to choose between a compassionate state and a responsible state.
In an apparent reference to Trump and MAGA-aligned policies, Speaker Welch also said that, quote, cruel and regressive policies that dehumanize neighbors or strip away fundamental freedoms will have no home in Illinois. Otherwise, Welch's speech focused a lot on unity. The House Minority Leader says she was naive to believe Welch's promises of unity 2 years ago when she became leader, and not anymore. She says Democrats pulled moves like passing a law that has since been found illegal to alter election rules in an attempt to stifle competition.
The gimmicks of election interference by the majority party must be permanently ended in Illinois. Illinois has always been a state of possibilities, but one-party control has stifled that success.
She says House Republicans will this year focus on growing the economy and no new taxes. Things were a bit more diplomatic from a bipartisan point of view over in the Senate.
And I look forward to that continued inclusion in the upcoming session. We represent the geographic majority of this state, and we have a lot to offer.
A big unknown for state legislators is how Trump's return to the White House will impact Illinois and the state's budget. There was talk about passing measures during this week's lame duck session, the final days for the former General Assembly, to help to, quote, Trump-proof Illinois. Now, that did not happen. No measures passed during lame duck. Now, Pritzker's office says that that is because Illinois already passed a lot of laws over the past couple of years after Trump's first term. The governor does say, though, that his administration and majority Democrats are ready to react should they need to as Trump returns for a second term.
All right, Amanda Vinicky, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And you can read Amanda's full story on our website. It is all at WTTW.com/news. Nearly 10,000 children in the care of Illinois' Department of Children and Family Services live with relatives, but more than 60% of those families are not eligible for foster care support resources. A new bill aims to address that issue and more. The Kinship in Demand, or KIND Act, unanimously cleared the Illinois Senate and House this month. Governor J.B. Pritzker voiced support for the legislation and is expected to sign it into law. Here with more on the bill are Nora Collins-Mandeville, Director of Systems Reform Policy at the ACLU of Illinois, Emily Madigan, Vice President of Children Welfare at Brightpoint, and we hope to be joined shortly via Zoom by State Senator Mike Simmons, a Democrat whose district represents parts of Chicago's North Side. Nora and Emily, thanks to the both of you for joining us. Nora, let's start with you. Please tell us about this legislation and what it would do.
This legislation is really exciting. This is an ACLU initiative that is focused in three main components. One is making sure that relatives are informed when a young person comes into care and engaged throughout that whole process. The second portion addresses relatives who become caregivers for young people or wish to become caregivers for their relatives. This is making sure that there's support, there's a navigator that can be provided for them, and that the funds that are paid to that relative are equal to what a foster parent would be paid. And then lastly, this removes barriers to permanent guardianship. This is a really important permanency goal when young people can't be returned to their home.
Why had not relatives who are interested in caring for a relative child who is in foster care, why had they not previously been receiving some of that support?
So up until now it's 2 Octobers ago, yes. There was a federal rule that was put in place that actually removed the barrier to receiving federal funds to subsidize those payments that are made to relatives. And so with that new rule, we now are going to be eligible, and with this new statutory change, we'll be eligible to draw down federal funds to help us to pay that equivalent amount, which is what we do for foster parents. We include state funds and federal funds, and this will allow us to do that for relatives.
Gotcha. Nora, why is it important for children to be placed with with relatives? No, sorry, not Nora. Emily, why is it important for children to be placed with relatives when possible?
Yeah, absolutely. We know, and research shows us, that children do best when they're placed with family. It's already a traumatic event when children have to be removed from their families, but if we can place them with someone they know, with someone they trust, usually in their home community, then that lessens the trauma of the child having to be separated from their family. So that's a great component. It also, children who are placed with kin are also more likely to be stable in their placements, which produces better outcomes at school with their social and emotional adjustment, and produces better outcomes overall for the child and their family.
What are some of the challenges that relatives might experience when attempting to become the foster parent for those kids?
Yeah, our current licensing regulations pre-Kind Act passing are really not built for kinship parents. They are very stringent, they're very bureaucratic. Unfortunately, they're built for people who have spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not they want to become foster parents. And the situation for a lot of our kin foster parents is that they may get a call in the middle of the night saying, can you step in? Can you care for your loved one? And so what this will do is it'll significantly reduce the burdens to helping kinship caregivers get equitable access to resources, services, and board payments. So it reduces things like having a specific number of bedrooms that children have to have in the home, or having a specific number of square feet per child per bedroom. So some really bureaucratic rules that we're now able to lessen and make sure that we create the easiest possible pathway to get equitable access to resources for those kinship caregivers.
DCFS data currently shows that there are more than 18,000 total children in the system, and more than 8,000 of them are Black. Researchers at the University of Illinois found that Black children are 250% more likely to be DCFS involved. Nora, what's the cause for this disparity?
The disparity, it's a very complicated issue.
Reasons, I'm sure.
Yes. Really, when you think about the different ways that young people can be brought to the attention of the system, and the ways, the bias that can happen when we're making decisions about what we see is happening in a family, there can be bias that comes into those decisions about when a young person is safe or not safe in their home, and what type of services can be provided. I
would imagine there are also, just sort of some demographic, some socioeconomic factors that go into that as well.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yes.
Okay. The legislation, it also includes more oversight. Nora, tell me how that will work, please.
Sure. So this actually will require the court to monitor whether the relatives are being engaged throughout the process. So the court will hold the department accountable in that way. This is really important for making sure that young people have a permanent home if they can't go home to their parents.
Emily, Nora mentioned the Kinship Navigator earlier. Tell us about that and how this legislation applies that.
Yeah, Kinship Navigator programs are great systems, and I'm so excited we're going to have one in Illinois. Other states have implemented them as well, but they're really comprehensive support systems for kinship caregivers. So that can be kinship caregivers that are involved in the foster care system. It can be kin that are caring for their children or their family members that aren't ever involved with child welfare, but it can provide things like support groups, access to local community resources, legal support if kinship caregivers need that. So it really is a comprehensive system of supports to people who are caring for their kin.
Emily, there was also the mention, I think Nora mentioned this as well earlier as well, permanent guardianship. How does this legislation work towards that?
Absolutely. So permanent guardianship or kinship guardianship is a pathway that is really a much more family-centered permanency pathway than what we have currently in our system. It allows family members who want to provide a permanent loving home to the child that's in their care, a pathway to do so without having to terminate parental rights. So currently a permanency pathway under our system is adoption, but in order to get to adoption, you have to terminate the parental rights of that parent. So you may be looking at a situation where you have a grandmother who has taken in their grandchild, but in order to get to adoption, they have to ask their son or daughter to terminate their parental rights through court to get to that pathway. So kinship guardianships allows us a permanent pathway to provide that young person a loving and permanent home without having to do the TPR route, the terminating parental rights route. So it provides a great option for the family, and it really is a much more family-centered approach.
And I imagine like that termination of parental rights might also be a barrier. A parent is fine with you raising the child because I'm in no condition to do it, but I don't want to give up my parental rights. This is my child.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it often takes a lot more time too through court. So this could be a quicker permanency option as well.
Nora, what kind of accountability measures are going to be in place for this legislation?
Oh, this is really neat. So what we've done is we have a public reporting requirement so that we can actually monitor and look at what the statistics are telling us. And then 3 years after implementation happens, the bill becomes effective when it has been in effect for 3 years. Apologies.
It's okay.
That the Auditor General, the Illinois Auditor General, will actually come and evaluate whether the department has performed, whether the department has followed what all of the provisions of this very large piece of legislation, whether the department has met those obligations.
What more would you like to see done to support children who are in foster care and, of course, you know, the adults who care for them?
The biggest thing that we could do to change the system is really make it driven by a young person's voice and by their family's voice. And not just say we want to hear what a young person wants to have happen, but to actually have that young person's voice listened to and have that drive the way that a case is going. So I think anything we can do policy-wise to ensure that that happens in a meaningful way is really important, as well as ensuring that young people have a seat at the policy-making table. So not just for their own case, but thinking about the whole system redesign.
Okay, advocating for themselves as well as others who are also in foster care who have that experience. That is where we'll have to leave it. Did not get to hear from the state senator, but next time, Nora Collins Mandeville and Emily Madeir. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Up next, a new effort to keep Black mothers safe and healthy. Stay with us. Black women are disproportionately affected by prenatal and postpartum complications. That's why Cook County Health says it's partnering with Prism Health Care to provide pregnant patients with free doula care. It's an effort to help bridge the maternal health gap between Black and white mothers. The pilot program is set to start later this year with 10 doulas, with plans to expand in the future. Joining us now are Christina Urbina, Women and Children's Services Executive Administrator for Cook County Health, Dr. Mary Tate, attending physician of obstetrics and gynecology at Cook County Health, and Donna Miller, Cook County Commissioner, whose district includes parts of the south and southwest suburbs. Ladies, thanks to all of you for joining us. Christina Urbina, let's start with you. Please remind folks what a doula is and why they're beneficial to pregnant people who want them.
Sure. Absolutely. So doulas are basically, you can think of them as a support person, a support and advocate, a person that can partner with them through prenatal care, labor, delivery, postpartum care. They can really enhance the partnership and the communication between patient and physician and their experience throughout healthcare.
Dr. Tate, from your perspective as an OB-GYN, how is having a doula helpful to someone going through the entire birth process?
It's absolutely invaluable. It's so important that prior to becoming an OB-GYN myself, I went through a accredited program to be a doula. It's really important because of all the things that Christina has mentioned. They're really the experts in the emotional and physical support of a patient throughout pregnancy, labor and delivery, and postpartum. And they're uniquely qualified to really help patients advocate for themselves. So it's absolutely vital.
Of course, because there's a lot more going on besides just the delivery of the baby.
Absolutely.
That women can use, or pregnant people can use support with. Commissioner Miller, why did you think it was important for Cook County Health to step in and start this program this way?
Well, it's really important for the health system to partner with our patients and really meet them where they are. And this was a great way to establish that Cook County Health can be a leader in reducing the maternal morbidity outcomes that we have here in the state of Illinois, and to provide the excellent service that we do from the hospital standpoint, but to give patients an option that they hadn't had in the past. We want to improve outcomes. We want mothers to have the best chance at having a healthy baby and healthy survival for themselves, and Cook County Health will lead the way in making sure that happens.
And you have your own birth story that sort of informs your work in this. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, well, I mean, it's 21 years ago, I had my first son, and during that process, it was really something where you have a plan. I had a birthing plan, which I don't even know if we called it that at that time, but now people are familiar with that concept of having a birthing plan, which included, not having residents or fellows working on me. And so when the fellow came in and asked me multiple questions, and one of the questions was, have you used drugs? And I said, no. And then he said, well, are you sure you haven't used drugs? And I said, no. And then I said, why? And then my husband was luckily there with me, who is a healthcare provider. He's a dentist. And my husband was like, hold on a second. I think you already asked her that like 3 different times. He said, well, I just want to make sure she understood the question. Well, of course I understood the question, but that just goes back to where if you had a doula or someone there supporting you, that could have been probably alleviated from the very beginning. But it's also the really misconception and the discrimination that Black women feel when they go to a healthcare provider that's not one in their own race, let's say, and asking questions that are derogatory towards you because of preconceived notions about what Black women represent.
Right, and of course we'll get to some culturally, the importance of culturally sensitive care as well, but the last thing you want to have to do is defend yourself against a question like that when you're in labor. Yes. So a Northwestern medicine study found that in a cohort of 988,480 births, so almost 990,000 births at 127 hospitals across the state between January 2016 to June 2023, the overall rate of severe maternal complications rose from 1.4 to 2%. So it's gone up. And of that, non-Hispanic Black patients had more than double the severe maternal morbidity rate at 2.6% versus white patients at 1.1%. Christina Urbina, I'm going to come to you with this first, but how can increasing the number of doulas help decrease that disparity?
Yeah, so I think increasing the number of doulas to really partner with the patient to help, understand what their plan is, what kind of care that they want to help them, feel empowered and help advocate for the care that they deserve, right? It's and in partnership with their physicians. And Dr. Tate and I, have talked about this at length, that it's a multi-pronged approach, right? There's the emotional support. It is, and there's also the clinical support. So I think, from my perspective, it's really important to have that advocate in the room for our pregnant patients to really help them get the care that they want and that they deserve.
And just like Commissioner Miller just described, it's important to have that culturally sensitive care as well, because I know administrators are also requesting bilingual doulas too.
Sure.
Tell me about the importance of making sure that your doula probably understands what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, communication is key, and we know that patients, understand and need to receive the care in the language that they understand. So whether that be English, whether that be another language, that's very important.
Dr. Tate, the doula program set to hire 10 doulas to provide this service free of charge, knowing that there are about 1,000 pregnant people in Cook County Health System. 10 doulas probably not enough right away, but what more can be done to ensure that people who want this service have access to it?
The important thing to know about this service is that it's really an opt-in service. We want this to be available to any patient who's interested. So we have multiple touch points in our system at which patients are going to be introduced to this service is available. So we have a nurse prenatal education visit when patients first learn that they're pregnant, where they learn all the things about the do's and don'ts in pregnancy. In that visit, they'll learn about this program. There's a new visit with the obstetrician. Well, they'll again learn about this program. There's so many places that we have touch points with patients, and to get to the point about 1,000 deliveries, 10 doulas, That's not all happening at one time. They move through the cycle of care at different times, and patients enter our care at different times. So a patient could come in who hadn't had prenatal care and show up and are ready to deliver, and we can be able to provide that service then. So they're not going to use services as long if they're entering later. A patient could come in, with the positive pregnancy test very early on and be able to opt into that service. And so we're just excited to get started. I mean, to be able to expand the amount of services that we can provide and the wraparound support to birthing people, we're over the moon.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that Black women face in securing proper prenatal and postpartum care? In about 30 seconds.
I know, right? There's so many things. A big part of it relates to insurance. Being a safety net hospital in the city, fortunately, we're able to get patients in, get them into getting insurance and care for them regardless of where they are at that point. But then when we think about Black women in particular, part of it is that a lot of patients don't end up having insurance access before they get pregnant. So patients come into pregnancy with different chronic illnesses that we need to make sure that we're addressing in short order, and that we make sure that after they deliver, they get linkage to services to make sure that they're taken well care of for hypertension or diabetes or the myriad of issues that we might have uncovered during their pregnancy.
So Commissioner Miller, we've got about 25 seconds. The budget is allocating $1 million for this pilot program. What's next?
Well, what's next is making sure that it's implemented and the doulas get on board. But I do have to say that I really think that this is how we get things done in Cook County. We start off with getting it in the budget. So that was the first step, and then making sure that we have the pull-through through the hospital system. And I'm really proud of myself and my colleagues for making sure that we have this program, and now we're educating so many more patients, and we already had the team in place to do it.
All right, best of luck. Looking forward to seeing how it does. My thanks to the three of you, Christina Urbina, Dr. Mary Tate, and Commissioner Donna Miller. And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. An effort intended to protect victims of domestic violence passes in Springfield, but gun rights advocates are pushing back. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports free educational initiatives in the legal profession.